Um, yeah, so I mean, just to kind of start, last time we spoke, you said a lot about that. Some of the Democrats were waiting until after the primary election to kind of, provide support financially and everything like that. Just
Mhm.
kind of what's been the reaction since the primary.
Oh, it's been great. Yeah, funding has increased exponentially. Um,
Hmm.
yeah, we've this past week we've received several $1,000s from ActBlue, and then also been receiving much greater support from the different county chairs and whatnot. It's been awesome. Yeah, Washington County's been amazing down in Marietta. So is Jefferson County. They've been outstanding. Is the only word to put for it.
Okay, that's awesome. I mean, does that kind of give you a little bit more confidence, I guess, heading into the special election and further, just knowing that you have that support behind you?
Yeah, confidence. Look, I've never been unconfident that I am the best candidate for this position, especially among the
Hmm.
crop of people that have been applying for it, right? Um, Confidence in our capacity and capability to get the word out to voters, that has increased a lot. Yes. Yes, because
Hmm.
that's always been our biggest concern. How are we going to let people to know about me? Because heck, even during the primary, I was getting some Republican voters to pull a Democratic ballot just so they could vote for me. So
Hmm.
we always knew the biggest issue was getting people introduced to me, knowing the comprehensive plans, especially now in the special election, compared to Ruley and his dearth of actual plans on his website. Um, yeah, we always knew is about getting the word out. So on that front, yes, it's increased greatly.
What have you done to kind of get the word out more?
Oh, it's been traveling the district. Um,
Hmm.
Spending a lot of time with farmers, because because my entrepreneurial experience with working with manufacturers. I've been speaking with them, of course, and that's a lot easier. Up here in Mahoning, in our neck of the woods. Um, a majority of my time, I have to be honest with you, has been reaching out to rural voters. I went to the Carrollton livestock auction the other week. Um, getting going to the areas where a lot of people, their first comment is to me, no one seems to care about us and everyone seems to forget about us.
Hmm.
A, to prove to them like I'm not that person. And then B, the only way I could address their problems is by learning about their problems, right? I visited a few times with the striking workers down in New Philadelphia. Um,
Hmm.
and it was great to see that they approved their contract. I haven't been able to take a look at what they got through, but considering how strong those guys were holding, guys and gals, considering how strong
Hmm.
they were holding together, I'm sure it's what they needed and what they wanted.
Awesome.
Specifically
Uh,
makes you the best candidate for the job.
Well, I'm the one with actual federal government experience. Like when it comes to like Ruley's main policies are what? Guns, oil, Trump. Like, look, if we want to get into the insurrectionist angle, it's people like him that keep pushing these lies and keep okaying these lies and not pushing back against them, right? And they get on networks, mostly conservative networks, and there is next to no pushback to remind people that, oh yeah, well, we knew no one on Fox News' staff actually believed any of this because we have their text messages, right? So sheerly from a merely from the standpoint of actually protecting our democracy, he is not the best candidate. He just feeds into this, and because he has to, because that's what the GOP has to do right now, right? Because their only real policy over the last several decades was trickle down economics, and trickle down never trickled down. That's in my opinion. That's why Trump was so easily able to take over their party because their ideology failed. And so Trump was able to just move in with his hate and fear rhetoric, pushing against disadvantaged groups and minority groups, which happens all the time that democracies die whenever there's extreme wealth gaps. People get angry. And like simple things like this, I don't know if Michael really understands. I haven't had a conversation with him. I certainly haven't been able to debate with him. Right? He was too afraid to debate his primary opponents, and now it seems like he's too afraid to debate me. I don't know what other reason he would have for not wanting to, especially if I'm so much more unprepared than he is. Um, and then also, he doesn't even seem to understand his, main anything that could be called an actual policy from him. Fracking. Right? He doesn't seem to understand commodities markets. He doesn't seem to pay attention to the fact that Hundreds of thousands of jobs were promised to us over the last decade and a half now since we've started this, and it hasn't happened. He keeps talking about lowering energy prices. What has happened to our natural gas prices? They've gone up. Why? Because this is controlled on commodities markets. These are controlled by international forces, right? So ultimately, he wants to turn us into an extractive economy, which, if you guys aren't aware, that there's this thing called Dutch disease, that it obliterates any other kind of economic activity that happens in districts that they turn themselves over into extractive economies, right? Just look at Africa and what's happened with them. And we have, 1% of the natural gas supplies in the Utica Shale compared to OPEC Plus in Russia? That's 1%. The only way his plan could work is if we cut ourselves off from the international oil and gas markets, which would cause our prices to skyrocket, break all international treaties, reduce our international hegemony that we've established since World War II. And heck, look no further than the sale of Eastern Ohio Gas to the company out of Canada, right? Is selling a majority of the actual fracking wells and oil fields and mineral rights to a foreign power. Is that really energy independence? We have Norwegian companies buying up sites. We have companies that are taking 30% of their investment from the Chinese national gas company, buying up sites. I don't know. I mean, again, we also saw the report from Cleveland.com saying how he's just quoting lobbyists. And that's the only excuse I could come up with. It's either that or he doesn't understand how commodities markets work. So I don't really call that much experience. And especially because he's been in a supermajority in our state house. That's really going to get you ready for federal politics like I dealt with in dealing with the Pentagon and getting funds to different groups I was working with up in the Boston area. That doesn't seem like much valid experience. I'd be down to hear the contrary opinion on that, though.
So are you saying this country can't be energy independent?
Well, if we want our gas prices to go through the roof, sure we can. Yeah. If you want to hand us over to even more power to big money lobbyists, yeah. And it can if we actually diversify our energy sources, right? This is why green tech is so important. Look at the history of solar panels. We were the ones that invented that. And then why do we fall behind countries like Germany in innovation and now currently China? Well, they're investing tons, it's even Saudi Arabia, investing tons of their funds into actually pushing forward in this research. While we finally got something through in the Inflation Reduction Act, why in the world don't we like diversification? It's just a standard business policy. And his policies are just going to push us more to a singular source of energy, which is, again, look no further than what happened in North Dakota with those fracking wells, right? Ghost towns now. Why? Some of them pop back up now that the price of crude has gone up, but they're ghost towns now. Why? Because fracking has a price floor that's inherently inflationary, right? When the Canadian company, sorry, I'm forgetting the name of it now, they didn't send out a letter to everyone saying, hey guys, this is how we're going to bring efficiencies and lower your gas prices. No, they guaranteed that natural gas prices are going to go up for their customers. They said, hey, here's our 5-year plan on how your prices are going to go up, right? So yes, we can be energy independent if we do what America does best, which is lead the way. And when it comes to energy, that's in green tech. When it comes to energy, that's in fusion technology, right? Germany, it's I guess about a month ago now, maybe 2 months at this point. I used to call my fusion project down in Marietta, which is going to take resources from our entire district to provide. We're putting it down there because of its geolocation. But that's how we get diversification. Germany just put $60 billion into their commercialization initiative with the goal of 15 years. That should be unacceptable to any American, right? They're actually pushing for diversification. And again, this is just a standard business policy. Doubling down on one resource is not the way to get to energy independence.
So you would push for solar, wind.
Oh, of course. Of course. Look, right now, yes, fossil fuels. Of course, we need a transitionary period. Should it have started 20 years ago if we didn't have big oil lobbyists down in Congress pushing to not innovate in this field. And again, when was federal funding pulled from solar panels? I believe it was around the 80s. I think that's when we stopped funding that stuff in earnest, right? If we kept on that path, we'd already be there, but we're not there because we pulled back because of big money influences, right? And so it's so yes, of course I support green tech energy. I think one would be foolish not to. And you could even look at around the country that, there are, what was it, out in Pennsylvania, the old one of the old coal power plants, they tore it down and they're putting up a field of solar panels. Do I like the look of big solar? No. Do I like taking away farming land to do it and removing top layers of topsoil so that that cannot be fertile in the future? No, I'm not okay with that. But it's about looking at it scientifically, understanding how we got here, understanding the current problem, and coming up with actual answers, not just slogans, to get it done. Right? And then green tech, I just see it as a bridge to fusion technology. Right? This is why I got the United Mine Workers endorsement. Why? Not only because I'm going to support their pensions and don't want them to play Russian roulette with the stock market with converting those to 401ks. Not only do I want to protect them from mining companies, declaring bankruptcy so that they don't have to respect their previous debts and then reestablishing themselves in a different incorporation, but also because we could use coal to be the backbone of transmission technology for the green tech revolution. Right? Because one of the issues we have is that we're in a Goldilocks zone. Not too much sun, not too much wind, and there's a gold rush, be the one making the shovels. Not only that, right, my slogan, high pay, high skill, high dignity union jobs, right? We take this group of people that currently, because of all the green tech push, are derided as destroying the environment. It's not their fault. They're just doing their jobs. Then all of a sudden, we make them the backbone of our energy economy again. Because that's what my mission's about, bringing high pay, high skill, high dignity jobs. And that's going to require a manufacturing establishment, reestablishing, modeled after the success that's happening around Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. It's not going to be turning us into some extractive economy where a lot of these companies have already said they don't want to do this is publicly available, right? In their investors meetings, right? They've already said they don't want to develop these. They just want to buy up the rights, probably so they could flip them, because it's not economical for them to do it right now. That's why there was such a slowdown in natural gas fracking development. And look, since we're on the fracking, what are they, and let's talk about experience. What are they pushing through the State House right now? Unitization, making it easier for companies to just say to farmers, good, you don't want to give us a deal, we're going to hand this to you and we're going to force you to give us your mineral rights. That's the kind of experience we want in Congress? I don't think so.
How do you convince, in recent months, a lot of people in Mahoning County have voiced their opinion that they don't want wind or solar or anything like that. It's been voted down recently. How do you convince them that it's the best for them?
Well, first of all, we have to accept that we're fighting against propaganda networks in our nation. Right-wing conservative propaganda networks, mostly watched by older citizens, which, again, our population statistics are worse than Japan when it comes to age and birth rates, right? How I convince them is say, there are options, there are ways around this. We could use parking lots, right? And again, it's talking to them, letting them know where the future lies. It's letting them actually be informed of what's possible and what's probable for the future. And again, just doubling down on natural gas is not the answer. They have to look no further than what's happened to your natural gas prices over the last decade. And look, a lot of this is once again coming from the state level. Is big government push down. I'm not for that. I'm for small government. If communities don't want to have solar panels in their areas, I'm not okay with that. But if they approve that, that's their call, right? And this is the inherent pushback when it comes to the GOP side of things. They're for small government as long as they're controlling the small government, right? They're not for small government when governments want to ban plastic bags or charge extra for plastic bags because they, actually care about the environment, right? Which, of course, really put down a ban and got it through their supermajority Senate to not enable them to do that. That's big government overlordship. And also, again, there are other options available. We have the Hannibal power plant. Right now, they're researching using coal for hydrogen energy, right? There are options available.
How do you create the high skill, high pay, high dignity manufacturing jobs?
Well, first of all, it's using a lot of our sites and resources that are available here. Not least of all is our, human capital that we have, right? This manufacturing is in our bones. People say people don't want to work. No, they just don't want to work for starvation wages. They want to work for good wages. And if you look no further than, again, Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. Why is Wright-Patterson Air Force Base successful? Because there's a lot of federal funds coming in. Yes, it's going to take hundreds of millions of dollars, several $100 million in the least, to actually jumpstart this innovation district. Okay? But those funds are already being spent elsewhere. They're just not getting spent here. Right? It's about working with the Department of Education, right? One of them, they're going to have to fill the funding holes that are being created because of Bill Johnson's presidency at YSU to actually increase our development of our capability in research and development. It's about working with the Department of Energy, getting them on board with understanding that these are the materials, right? Advanced alloys, advanced composites, advanced carbonics, like we're calling it when it comes to coal. And getting them on board to shift their funds that are going elsewhere to actually come here. And how am I going to be able to do that? I'm going to be a blue congressman in a supposedly incredibly red district, right? We're calling it the Manchin effect, right? What was he able to do in the Senate? Right now, we could deride him as it was a negative influence, but he was able to exert power. He was able to exert influence because he was what maintained the Democratic majority. This is the role I will have in Congress. And they will have to give me projects so that we can actually keep me in office, right? And Sherrod Brown will be on board with this. He knows the power of having a Democratic representative in a red district, right? Because I'm the actual capitalist here, right? Understanding that capitalism was designed as a pushback against mercantilism, which led to too much power being held by companies. Right? It requires a strong government. Free market doesn't mean lawless market. It means free and open access to the market by our small businesses. And that is the final and most important piece. It's getting this funding here so that we can have small business startups that are doing research and development. They're already having a lot of success with this in alliance. And that's about getting local municipalities on board and working in the same direction. Pushing aside taking ownership over things and understanding that it's all about the community. And again, I keep bringing it back to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base because their budget increase this last year was greater than Mahoning County's entire budget. To say it can't happen in Ohio is wrong. To say it isn't happening in Ohio is wrong. It can and it will.
Jumping topics for a bit.
Yes, sir.
What are your thoughts on immigration reform? Is it needed? And if so, what would you like to see?
Well, even the Democratic Party agrees that immigration is reform is needed. That's why the bill is sitting there ready to go through, right? It got through the Senate until former President Trump decided to tell his underlings, hey, don't support this because I need a campaign issue, right? So the entire reason you're asking this right now is because they stopped that bill from going through. That was the immigration reform bill. This is a settled issue. It's sitting there languishing because the supposed border control guy doesn't want it to get done because he actually doesn't care, because they actually don't care. This is something that has sat there for decades. Now, do I think it needs to go further? Yes, I do think we need to push further expand the courts so that we're not waiting 6 months or a year to process claims. We're doing that in 1 to 2 months, right? People don't travel thousands of miles to have to swim the Rio Grande and crawl under barbed wire. If we actually expanded our ports of entry to allow for the legal immigrants coming in, the legal refugees coming in, then yes, And again, this bill is sitting there, which I wholeheartedly support, right? There's no such thing as closing the border. Where's the door, right? What happened with Trump's wall after part of it went up? In a month, it started falling down. Immediately, there were videos of people scaling it. Even when they had the Remain in Mexico plan, that required us paying Mexico to allow it to happen. And then also, there was still immigrants coming through. Just closing the border is not possible because it's not realistic unless we're in a James Bond film. Just look at what happened in Texas when they deployed their National Guard to stare at the desert for months at a time. What happened? Suicide rates up because they're staring at empty desert, right? So, and then secondly, it's about reestablishing our diplomatic power, right? One of the problems we've had, Biden is still trying to get his diplomats approved. His term ends in under a year. Why? Because of intransigence from the GOP, which we don't want to expand that influence in Congress or the Senate, right? So it's actually reestablishing our ability in USAID to actually help these governments stabilize, right? When we pull out, it's not some sort of, oh, they're going to be self-sufficient. No, what happens? There's a power vacuum. This happened when we pulled back from supporting the Kurds, right? What happened? Turkey moved in, murdered them. And then what happened after that? Russia came in to bring the peace. That's exactly what's happening in South America right now, where we have the Wagner Group coming in, intentionally destabilizing these governments to increase our immigration crisis at the southern border. But this was already a settled issue until the former guy came down and said, hey, don't do this because I need reporters asking this question of Democrats.
And how do you address issues of rising inflation and keeping the economy stable?
So I'm sure you guys are probably aware of the report that came out, I think it's about 6 months old now, that 52% of inflation over the last 2 years is because of increased corporate profits, right? 8% is because of rising wages. 8%. So that means over half of inflation is simply because we don't have a free market economy anymore. We have a corporatist, neo-mercantilist economy. And then also 30% is from raising energy prices. Why is this happening? Because of conflicts around the world that if we don't go in as the preeminent superpower and preeminent leader, right? Arab Spring, they were flying American flags. Maybe not because they love America, but because of what we stand for. This is why, yes, we needed to take faster action with Ukraine. Yes, we need to fully support them. Yes, we need to do everything we can to calm the conflict that's happening in Israel right now. But it's all about actually taking our world hegemony, not running away from it due to Russian propaganda infecting our news media, saying, oh, look how evil the Ukrainians are, but stamping down on that crisis and fully supporting them. And then also when it comes to the corporate side of things, we need to start trust busting these monopolies and duopolies. We need to start promoting small business, not just in our words, not just passing some bill that has a sunset clause for small businesses, but the corporate clauses actually just keep continuing and get grandfathered through the years. It's actually enacting policy that works for small businesses to increase competition, right? Again, a free, open, and fair market. And to bring it back to farmers real quick, like our farmers are struggling. You got 2 companies controlling 90% of food production and distribution. There's like what, 2 meat packing places in meat processing places in the entire state of Ohio. I think there's about the similar amount in dairy processing, right? Our small farmers can't compete with big corporate factory farms. They can't do it. But we keep allowing consolidation after consolidation, which is efficient, sure, but the most efficient thing is just having one company do it all. So why don't we just allow that? Because it's anti-competitive. And that's exactly what we're allowing to happen in our markets. Again, over half of inflation is increased corporate profits, right? And then it's reducing choice, which arguably is very communist. Yeah, I'm going to toss that word in there because that's what is happening here. Right? We are losing choices in the market. We are losing choices from the producers for their available options on where to sell their goods. right? This is just basic economics from The Wealth of Nations, Adam Smith.
You had earlier had discounted Rulli's experience in the Senate
Mm-hmm.
for being part of the supermajority.
Yes, sir.
But so you're going to go into, if you win, you're going to be a freshman congressman.
Mm-hmm. So is he
in the minority.
Well, actually, in the even, right? Because it evens up the vote in the House.
Well, it'll still be very tight. It'll be like maybe like a three vote majority. So you think that makes you, as you had mentioned that makes you feel having more power, more influence as an independent voice?
Again, it's about bringing both sides on board. From the Democrats, that's a lot easier because it's saying, you want to lose a seat, don't help me. From the Republican side of thing, in my first 100 days in office, the goal is to get through, I know the farm bill is in transition because there used to be a gentleman's agreement between both parties that they weren't going to mess with our farmers. But of course, the GOP even dropped that. And look, I hate the party over country stuff is bad for us, but I keep mentioning it because they're pushing election lies. They want to prove that the government doesn't work, and the easiest way to do that is to make it not work, right? And so what does that mean? That means focus on issues that we can get on board with each other. And as it used to be before they broke their gentleman agreement, that used to be the farmers, right? So that's my first 100 days, the easiest thing to get through out of everything I want to do, because the education thing is long term, right? The manufacturing district is shorter term, but still long term relative to what we could do for our farmers, right? When I've been talking to farmers, their biggest issues are handing down or taxes, selling ability. We'll stick with those for now. Yeah, taxes and selling ability. So for taxes, they have an issue where they're not able to hand their farms down to their next of kin because the taxes are too high. They get hit with the wealth tax, whether or not they're millionaires or not. They get hit with that. We want to establish a farmstead exemption so that these farmers can actually keep their farms within their families like they want to, right? It's about not forcing them to go into debt spirals. It's about establishing something similar like used to happen in the Tennessee Valley Authority during the Great Depression, which again, our wealth gap is larger than it was before the Great Depression, right? These are the issues we're facing right now, no matter how fancy our cell phones are. So that's why when it comes to actually start wielding power in Congress, it's about focusing on the issues that we can agree upon. And then that, for me, is the farmers. And like, look, if they can't get on board on that, you best be sure I'm going to let their state, their constituents know what's happening and who's holding things up from them getting the relief that they repeatedly tell me that they need, right? Because the best way to get things done is to get people in there that want to work. And their constituents will know who's keeping us from actually helping the farmers in these rural communities, which again are mostly represented by people on the GOP side of things. And I'm sorry, I got lost. What was the other piece you mentioned, sir? How am I going to get things done? Yes. Oh, and then also stabilizing prices for our farmers. This is the other way that that increasing our diplomatic force is going to be of aid to them, because our front line of our diplomacy is our farmers, right? Our greatest asset is our abundance of arable land and the abundance of actual places to grow food that much of the world lacks, which has definitely stepped up the responsibility in that area since the war in Ukraine began in earnest. It's about allowing them to be able to grow, giving them guaranteed purchases from the government so that we could support our allies to the south, again, decreasing the immigrant crisis, the migrant crisis. And then, like, look, everything's about a cohesive whole, cohesive plan. When we bring in funds for education, and development, it's not just for advanced manufacturing. It's helping our universities, which are some of the most advanced research universities in the country, actually be able to increase their research, working with Ohio State Extension to research better, cheaper fertilizing alternatives. It's about working with Ohio University's current coal to graphite to graphene project, right? These things are already going. It's just about taking these innovations and actually putting the force of the federal government behind them. And I know you mentioned immigration. Like, personally, I'm more focused on our brain drain, right? It's the legal immigration problem that we're facing. We are losing people, right? If we have a state where in vitro fertilization and abortion are illegal, so people can't start families, they're not going to want to bring their kids here. If we have terrible public schools, they're not going to want to bring their kids here, right? What happened with our land taxes recently? They shot up, right? We could point to a lot of reasons, but one of those reasons is because we currently have a state house with a supermajority of Republicans. That's the kind of experience you want in Congress? Got to shoot up taxes for us? Right? I am so much more concerned about the brain drain. I am so much more concerned about getting families and young workers and young entrepreneurs here to our district. I'm so much more focused on that. That, especially for us up here in Ohio, that should be our main concern when it comes to immigration and migration. It's people migrating away from us, looking at the reasons, looking at the problem, and coming up with solutions.
We have about 3 minutes left.
Roger that.
David, did you have anything else?
I'm good.
Okay. Well, Mr. Kripchak, thank you very much for joining us. I appreciate the call.
All right, thank you, guys.
Everything like that. The endorsement should be in Friday's paper.
Friday's paper? All right. Thank you guys for your time. I'd really ask you to consider what we talked about today. If you have any further questions, please let me know, or you could refer to my website. And I'd advise you to refer to both our websites and see who has more comprehensive plans that actually work together. Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your time. Have a good one.
Thank you, guys. Have a good day.
You too.